Let's talk about Indian Wells because this is one of the coolest stories in all of sports that rarely ever gets discussed. And the reason for that is because a billionaire built the world's greatest tennis tournament in the middle of the desert. So this is the Indian Wells Tennis Tournament. It's unofficially known as the fifth Grand Slam on the tennis calendar, and despite being 2 hours away from the nearest major city in Coachella Valley or Palm Springs, the men's and women's tours have voted this tournament the best tournament on the tennis calendar for 10 straight years. But it wasn't always this way. So this is Raymond Moore and Charlie Pasarell. They founded this tournament in 1974, and the basic premise was that they were two former tennis professionals and they knew exactly what tennis players wanted out of a tournament. Many people didn't think this would work because Palm Springs was such a remote location, but they did it anyways, and it was almost immediately successful. So successful, in fact, that they kept having to move the tournament to new locations that were bigger and better than the last. Moore and Pasarell ended up building the Indian Wells Tennis Garden in the early 2000s, but then the tournament hit some headwinds. They had a couple big sponsors drop out, and they had a $77 million mortgage on this property. They were running out of cash, so they had to refinance the mortgage, and they went looking for a buyer. But the only two offers initially were investors out of Shanghai and Qatar. Moore and Pasarell didn't want to move the tournament out of Palm Springs, though, so they approached Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle, who also happens to be a billionaire, to buy the tournament. Ellison had been attending the tournament several years at that point, and he loved tennis, so he purchased the event for $100 million. But this wasn't just some passion project for Larry Ellison to blow a ton of money. He wanted to turn this tournament into a legitimate business. So from 2008 onward, he reinvested the profits every year back into the fan and player experience, hoping to make Indian Wells the world's best tennis tournament. Larry Ellison ended up investing $130 million more on top of the $100 million purchase. This included things like building a second stadium, renovating the first. This tournament also was the first tournament ever to use Hawkeye tracking technology on every court throughout the tournament. Ellison also brought in a production company that had worked on the Super Bowl to improve the fan experience with music. He invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in new landscaping with palm trees. And he really pioneered the idea that players should also have fans watch their practices by releasing the practice schedules early and even building stands around the practice courts. There's also a Nobu inside the stadium that's only open 2 weeks a year during the tournament, but allows fans to watch the action while they eat. And when you add all those things up, Larry Ellison has created the single best tennis tournament in the world. It generates $50 million in tax revenue for local governments every year, and the players love it because they get treated better than they do at Grand Slams, and it has a $20 million purse.